Great, thank you so much. Well, good morning. I guess I'll kick things off. I have just a few quick updates. I know we talked a little bit about one of the, I was meeting with the Deputy Director of Revenue Services who handles audits of assessments. We had an audit of our 2024 FY assessment, but it looks like it was also, the mistake was also on the FY '23 audit to give, I know counselors were here for that discussion last time around, but essentially there was, in general, there was a printer that was valued, I think, around $8,000. And instead of the year 2023, or quantity 1, year 2023, quantity 2023 was put into the quantity category, which turned an $18 million or $8,000 printer into a $14 million reimbursement, for, or submission for reimbursements. That equates to about, on that expense alone, about $125,000 or so. There were a few other small errors in there as well, but that wasn't just 24, it was also in 23. So the catch was in the 24, but they're now caught up on the 23 and 24. So we talked about a repayment. I think we settled on a reduction of future reimbursements of Betty, homestead exemption, other things, as opposed to a kind of one lump sum now off budget. So I think that's the most fiscally appropriate and responsible way to do it. So they'll just start reducing our reimbursement amounts in Betty, tree growth, other things over the next, there's not each reimbursement cycle. They come in at different times through the year for those reimbursements. But we expect to be fully paid back, but we won't be receiving those reimbursements for those categories. So likely it'll be a pretty significant underestimation of the amount of Betty, tree growth, homestead, et cetera, to be reimbursed for. So I think there's also like a solar credits reimbursement in there.
Do you know how long that will take until we're caught back up?
It looks, Sarah, I don't know if you remember from that conversation, but I think our initial estimates were like within this fiscal year. It might bleed into a little bit of next year's reimbursements.
Yeah, I think we'll be, in December, we're scheduled to get our Betty reimbursement, so we should be all set by the end of this year, calendar year. And then once they process, because that's only for 23, and once they process the 24 amount, then the reimbursement schedule will start at that point.
So just to clarify, so by end of December, all of what we owe will have been satisfied, or just 2023?
2024.
Yeah, just 1 year.
Okay, so we have another year of it after.
Correct. The mistake on 2024. I know it seems strange that but 2024 from theirs has been processed, like their audit's been finalized. It also was in the 2023, but even though that's beforehand, it's being processed second.
Second, okay.
So we'll pay back 2024s through a reduction in future reimbursement amounts by end of calendar year. And then once the 2023 processes, which we don't know exactly when that'll happen, but we'd anticipate about another 120,000 or so.
So next year, okay.
Yep,
So you have a hole in expected revenue coming to the city.
that's effectively it. And we had a surplus in previous years that was inappropriate.
So what does the hole do?
It's going to reduce, I think for the FY audit for this year, it's going to reduce our expected inflows. So I think, we should have enough, we do have enough to cover those pieces. So I don't expect it to be a budget buster to, put us into the hole in net negative. We have, as the previous audit said, while we're still working on a lot of things and we have a lot of audit findings, our undesignated fund balance from FY '24. Now we're still waiting on FY '25, but with our cash flow analysis, that shouldn't affect us. We'll be over that amount to cover.
So it sounds like, given the error, that the state has been more than fair with a repayment plan, and credit to them, because that was our mistake, correct?
Yep.
And they have found a way to try and impact this city as least as possible.
Yep,
Fair to say?
absolutely.
Okay.
So there's that. And I know we had PD ordinance or PD overtime issue we're going to talk about this week. Our HR director's not here. Last week, our chief wasn't here, so I'm delaying that till the following week. But just to give you a little kind of background going in, we added an additional management personnel in there recently, in addition to the deputy chief, but also the captain. I think that was 2 years ago that position was added. There's been sort of, it's been a common practice, I guess you could say, for management, police personnel to take overtime shifts when necessary and then be paid for those overtime shifts. But when talking with legal counsel and HR and myself, it's not clear in the ordinance if you're an exempt employee that you would be getting overtime. So there's a few issues with it. Fairness for, a lot of folks are here, extra meetings that are managers across City Hall and don't get overtime for that. And when you take a management role, that's, I think in general, that's kind of part of the deal. But it is pretty unique in the police department on how they, on occasion they have to take a shift. It's not like they're coming here to, their own job requires more. It's, there's a specific shift for an officer to take. It has been budgeted for, but it's not clear in the ordinance. So just, especially, so it has been budgeted for. I think it's within their area, but looking for guidance for council and just to standardize it. So if we want to do it, let's add it to the personnel ordinance that this is a special class of employee that's allowed to take additional overtime due to the nature of their role. I wouldn't expect that for the chief. I think the deputy and the captain could be in there, but I think that there has to be at least one person in the department that's, you're in the assigning overtime game, not the taking it. But I could see for the deputy chief and the captain for that to be an allowable use. But either way, if we're going to go that way, we'd need to, I think, amend the personnel ordinance to have it. But
You can't have it both ways. You're either salary or you're an hourly employee.
Yeah, and that's typically how it worked. The union, are those positions part of the union? So they're non-union, right? So it's strictly up to the city.
correct.
Okay.
Now, it has been in their job descriptions in the past, and it's been a past practice. Now, in the union, the past practice has a little more weight, it feels like, at least talking to legal counsel, than management and exempt employees. So, that could be a totally different, but that'd also be a totally different process. But for management employees, past practice, I'm told it's, gone back a fair amount of time, but for me, if it's gonna be a practice, it needs to be in the, it can't just be an edit in a job description. It's gotta be, in our personnel ordinance, that there's a special class of employees.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt. Is there any feel for what goes on in the fire department?
That's a great question. I've heard it's happened before, but I want to check with the chief, and yeah, that's probably the biggest fairness issue, especially public safety was applying that, and they also have to force and call people to come in for shifts. So I'll ask the chief and deputy chief. That's a great question.
And again, you're either salary or you're an hourly. I struggle with changing when it fits the moment.
Yep.
Maybe I'm being impersonal, but, and maybe changing it abruptly is not fair if it's changed. Maybe that could be pushed into July 1st or so it's not some abrupt, if that's been the past practice, I would think we ought to lean on fairness and give fair notice that behavior has got to stop, or continue. I don't know what the right thing is, but I abruptly stopping something with a vote from the council that's been customary, I'd like to be fair.
Yep.
I think that's a
Yeah.
really good point, Steve. And maybe we factor it in for next year's budget, so
Yeah.
July 1st, as
Yeah.
you said. Following up on Steve's points, do any of the management positions, do they have employment contracts?
You're looking at the only one.
Yeah, so I thought, so I think even more so than to Steve's point is, whatever we decide, I think it should at least not start until, if they're acting this year under those you know, or something along those lines, finding the balance.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah, maybe I should have thought about overtime in my contract. It's been a
Well,
lot
I
of
think
it.
Steve and I will tell you, if you're a managing position, there's not gonna be any overtime.
No, this is one too where I think I'm a little, I don't know, you know, we always take personal experience, you want to have empathy for these pieces, and I'm
Yeah.
just, when I think of the overtime that I put in
Oh, yeah,
every
yeah.
single week, you know. But different roles, yeah, I also don't have a large force that kind of I'd have to force into overtime, although actually I do that a lot too. But,
We see all the work you're doing though, Charlie, don't you worry.
oh, I love this job. I wouldn't, you know, it's one of the privileges of this job is, you know, yeah, you put in a lot of work, but it's such mission-driven stuff, and there's never a day that's not interesting and awesome. There's sometimes I wish I could be back just cleaning up golf balls and a golf course all day
Not
long.
a bad gig.
So PD over assessing. Oh, Steve, I know you had a question last time around on can the municipal budget be brought into a similar process to the schools side of things? So I'm still waiting for kind of final legal guidance. I did an initial review, talked to a fair amount of folks. I believe this question was asked before. You know, there is section 5.01 of the initiative referendum, the general authority of the budget notes that the registered voters of the city of Ellsworth may propose orders and ordinance to the city council, except that an order or ordinance proposed by initiative may not extend to the budget or capital program or any ordinance relating to the appropriation of money levied or taxes or salaries of officers or employees. So I believe it's specifically called out in the charter that you can't referendum that side of things. I want to look more, and I think there's another piece down. I know, Jared, we talked about it once on like the capital expenditures. I believe it's above 0.5% of the total valuation can go to, but we're nowhere near that just to do the massive valuation growths. But I want to look into also, you know, what about the entirety of the budget? That means you can't take, we want this line item to be voted yes or no. Is that the intent of that? Or is there like is there a separate way to kind of have the entirety of the budget voted at referendum that wouldn't necessarily be in violation of that provision? So I've asked legal counsel to kind of weigh in there. I don't know, Patrick, if you know this from your municipal experience, that seems to be like one of the key differences between a city council form of government and a town meeting form of government, or a town council form is that budget appropriation kind of month to month in a budget cycle and, you know, in a majority votes class. But I'm going to get that legal definition on if, you know, and if you have to amend the charter, if you'd want to do that, or if you'd have to replace the charter with a town meeting for the governor or something like that.
Yeah, my experience is if your cities are organized, any municipality has a legislative body that is the council, that is their purview. That's why larger, you know, municipalities move towards this form of governance, because there's a lot to handle that town meetings for smaller communities where it can work there. But it's a good question. I can't give you a 100% answer. I know there's a town in, I think it's Lisbon or Livermore Falls, where they're considering changing their form of government, kind of basically back to a town meeting form of government. That's a much smaller community, whereas here, you know, we're 10,000 people almost. So it's a good question. I think the answer is that's the purview of the council. But all that can be changed, you know, if the community wanted to change it through changing the charter and all that. That's quite the process.
Yeah, I think I lived in a town once has a larger population than Ellsworth, but it runs by town meeting form of government. And wow, those town meetings for budgets, they make our city council meetings look very, you know, they had 2-3 auditoriums they'd have to book up. I think in Andover, Massachusetts too, it's like 60,000 people in a town meeting form of government, something crazy like that. And it's it's like each big appropriation block gets voted on. It's really interesting.
I'd like to see balance. If the council doesn't want to amend the charter to allow the citizens' input, is there a way that the school doesn't have to go out to referendum? I'm after balance. I don't like, okay, fine, if this is the way it's gonna be, that's okay, but what could we do to stop the cost of this school budget referendum. So we had balance. That's my big thing. My personal opinion is I'd like to do all of it, but if that is messy, what would we have to do none of it? So there's not that cost of that election, and there's not that unbalance.
Yeah, let me dive in a little deeper there. I know we did a little bit of this last year because there was like my memory's gonna be a little hazy here, but it's like a 3-year cycle, comes back. There was actually some varying legal opinions on if you could just basically not put it back on and just float off of that cycle if it doesn't go back on, or if you're required to ask if you want to do the process again. We got some competing legal opinions at the time, but essentially it was like, you're in a 3-year cycle now, so it's not gonna be until this one. And I think last cycle, to your point, Steve, on balance and process, like, we saw that in the budget cycle last time, right? Like, how the school comes in, and it's a separate, it's a kind of a department, but then it also has a separate vote, and we're kind of weighing in as a council and manager, and then, but our processes had to get like realigned so that it can get back out to vote here, and then back to the board, and then back onto the ballot. And wasn't it the only thing on the ballot in the spring? So then we have the expense and the, especially because elections come in City Hall, so we got to shut down different areas of City Hall, all for that one piece of it. And to your point, Steve, like, it is the biggest piece of municipal spending and taxpayer dollars, but it's, they have their own processes just like we do.
Yeah, balance is, I think, I think that's where my feeling come from. Putting out half of it doesn't make sense to me, so either putting out all of it, which sounds very convoluted, maybe putting out none of it and rely on the elected officials. One of the two. I just don't like both.
And I think, well, I'll get you the final legal opinion on kind of both, and your question, Patrick, on, hey, if we, if you wanted to go to more of a town meeting, I'll get an answer there anyways, just so folks know. But yeah, my gut is that it still probably has to go, and it's up to the voters to decide if they want to keep, that on the ballot, or to keep moving forward with that process, or they could say no. So I don't think we're allowed to say one way or the other in these meetings when we put things on the ballot, how folks feel, but that, I think that's kind of the voter process, and if they want to weigh in on that.
It'd be good to know. I think Steve's asking good questions, and
Yeah.
it'd be
Yeah.
good to know.
Great, that's it for me. I'll hand it over.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off the budget, we obviously are starting the process, as I mentioned last week, having some meetings, initial meetings. We have a department head meeting next month to kind of retrain staff, since we have some new staff, to go over how to input the budget into the Cassell software that we use. But I also want to just make a mention, I know we're months away, but talking about the budget process, when we have the budget meetings, they're posted on the website, and that's obviously open for citizens to come in. And I think it's good for them to know that that's all that transparency is there, and they're willing to listen to each department as it is. I also wanted to mention that yesterday we met with Sue Lassard, who's come in to kind of be a consultant with us. Sarah was there, and the whole finance team met for over 2.5 hours, but honestly very informative. Sue's done a great job to come in and kind of just, I guess you'd say, guide us to crossing the finish line, as she put it. It's nice to get her input. I know Charlie and myself, and you feel like you've accomplished great things, but it's great to hear someone from the outside saying you guys had a lot of challenges early on, and you guys have done great, and here's a few suggestions I have to get you guys farther along. So it's really been great having Sue help us out, and I think it's been really great for the team, and I'm excited for all the things that we're going to accomplish here. It is audit season as far as getting the FY25 audit started. So she's trying to help out with doing some reconciliations when it comes to water and sewer billing and some things like that. But I've already started the process of submitting stuff to our auditors, getting that stuff submitted. She should have all the water and sewer reconciliations done, she said, hopefully by the end of this month. So I'm hoping to get all the stuff that they need to make our auditors' lives a little bit easier, give accurate reports, and just excited for hopefully a smooth auditing process this time. So that's all I got on my end, unless you have any questions for me.
I have a question, Nate, and you don't, I know it's for deadlines, but do you have what, is there a goal for when you guys would try to actually have the audit done by?
Well, my goal initially was probably by the end of the calendar year. Now, I think it's gonna be a little unrealistic, just, like, especially talking with Sue. There's some things, like I said, the reconciliations of the water and sewer that haven't been done for years, that she's helping out with. So just getting them all accurate reports. I think my goal is to have everything to them in December. But I would say from that point on, I'd say a realistic goal would hopefully be by early February. And that's me kind of staying on top of them and making sure that they have everything they need and answering any questions they have. But yeah, I think my goal right now is kind of like that early February timeframe.
To have it completed and back from the
To
auditor?
have it completed, back and everything, yes.
Well, that, yeah, and that timing, I think, would work great for then the budgeting process, you know, having, then we're actually caught up and we're looking at the last fiscal year's audit, knowing where
Yeah.
we're at heading into this year's budget process. I think that'd be excellent.
Yep.
Exactly, yeah. That's the goal.
Yeah, I think there's kind of three on the financial, the big three, I think of them internally in terms of financial finalization edits. We've come a long way since I arrived 18 months ago. A long, long way when, you know, you all were doing budget meetings and people were just tossing random Word documents and no numbers matched up, no transparency. Those budgets are in draft form for 2 years in a row, online, ellsworthmaine.gov/budget. It's not hidden anywhere. And then we do the final form online. And I think Sue had mentioned too, like our budget process is, you know, we're close to, you know, excellent there, you know, best in class. The reconciliation, I can say that's kind of one of the big threes that, you know, I've never come once yet saying, here's our undesignated fund balance, and you can come off budget cycle and use undesignated fund balance. I know it had been done in the past to the tune of millions of dollars in undesignated fund balance for the police station and other things. Like, in my opinion, Ellsworth hasn't had a true undesignated fund balance in probably 5 or 6 years. So that's why I've never come to the council to ask for that. It either has to come in a specific reserve account or, you know, future appropriation. So we got to get that undesignated fund balance. It's a big tool in our tool set to, and it's an accurate reflection that the city is fully and completely reconciled amongst all accounts. So Sue Lessard is really helping us lead the way there with our team, because it was, you know, 5 years of unreconciled accounts. Takes a little while to get through. So we're close, but I'm hoping to have that for this cycle as well. The audit, as mentioned, like, you know, I know Ray has mentioned that too. It's, I think he and we have, it's a great point. We should not be finalizing city budgets year to year without the prior year's audit being done. We were 3 years behind in audits when I arrived. We got caught up on, so we're at least on cycle now. Now it's time to finish the deck and have it, you know, before the budget gets approved. One of the things that you have when you look at it is you can look back year to year to do a kind of linear analysis of cost spending. And I think last year I was able, because we got caught up on so many audits, to say, hey, where were we at on spending in 2020? What's driving growth? Last year was, this fiscal cycle was 2.9% increase in spending, which we did tag to inflation. Now I know valuations changed. That doesn't mean everybody's bill was the same, but it was a 2.9% increase in spending for government as a net. The prior year, I think, was close to 8%, and that's amongst municipal, school, and the county. And then the year before that, before I arrived, it was 17%. So it was like, what was driving that? Once you have your audits caught up, you can say, in the last, I did a memo on costs, and it was, wow, public safety, the addition of an ambulatory unit for the fire department, almost doubling of the size of the fire department, and the addition of the police station, addition in fire safety and dispatch and police personnel. You know, City of Ellsworth is spending around $3 million more per year on public safety. That was by far the biggest growth category. I think in my initial analysis, it was even a larger growth category than the schools increase over a similar period of time. So it provides kind of data for the council to see these are where your spending drivers are. That's not to, I mean, we're a growing city. That's not to say that we don't need more police. We don't need more fire departments and that ambulatory service. I know a lot of people choose to live in Ellsworth and chose for specifically because, you know, you're going to get a lot better health and safety care being in a city with that ambulance service. But at least it gives tools for us to kind of see where the growth in spending is and make decisions off of that. Then the final one obviously is the assessing piece. The getting the commitment out on time to the taxpayers, you know, which hasn't happened similarly in probably at least 5 years, maybe more. That is a core function of government, and you know, we had initial discussion on that at the last council meeting. We're trying to keep November light, the brand-new council, keep it to a little bit more updates in the November council meeting. But we'll probably be talking more about assessing in December. We've, in addition to talking to the deputy director about assessing, we had a really good conversation just about his thoughts on contract assessing over Maine, and he teaches literally the courses there. I think Sarah and I have talked to 2 other assessing individuals who reached out after seeing stories to kind of get their advice on, you know, each city and town does it uniquely. Say the bulk are in the contract category, some smaller than ours, some larger than ours, some the same size as ours. Some have a lot more assessors. I think the International Assessing Association or something for a city of our size is like, you should have 3.5 FTEs on assessing, was their recommendation. So I know in my initial proposal, like there was some hope maybe we could get some cost savings here with the full outsourcing, but insourcing or contracting out for additional services to kind of beef that up, I think should be under consideration as well. So I'll present some more options at the December meeting on that front, but that's kind of the big 3, the fully reconciled account. So we have an undesignated fund balance, audits done prior to the budget being finalized year to year, and that assessment and commitment being out. Unfortunately or fortunately, this meeting's being recorded, so so I'll be, you know, my contract's up in a year and a half, and that's a big one that, you know, I'm committed to do whatever it takes to get that done.
Nate, I have a question for you, if I could, but I'd just like to weigh in on your point there for a second. I'm asking questions, not making suggestions. And the question is this. Is there a form? We've heard many people feel that they were targeted on this appraisal adjustment, valuation adjustment. We've heard in this meeting that the waterfront people feel that they were targeted as opposed to other people. And I would like to say that there was a big controversy about a big jump, and the sale, in one doubling, but when you look at the sale price and the evaluation, it was in line. Larry had made a big adjustment, but when you look at what it sold for and Larry's big adjustment, there's not much of a fight about that. Maybe the fact that it jumped so much in 1 year was the shock of that whole thing that really, really tainted the situation. And I'm wondering, and I these are questions. I'm wondering, one, and I've heard this is really expensive, is what if the city does a complete reevaluation to put everybody on an independent scale of where we are before, in a given tax year, because that would, if the valuations go up, the mod goes down, and it doesn't change the ask, and I'm wondering if a reevaluation would be a fair option to everybody to feel like everybody's property got looked at and everybody's valuation got adjusted from the outside looking in. That's a question. Secondly would be, is it possible in a hybrid model of outsourcing, insourcing, that perhaps you outsource all new assessments in 1 year, so that there would be less draw on the insourcing, and all of the new properties built gets outsourced for the first evaluation, so that everyone started out with an independent valuation before the ask is committed from the taxpayer, which would adjust the mod. Those are questions, not suggestions, but I wonder if that's not a hybrid, but yet clear the decks with a fair look from the outside, looking in of valuations. Just a question.
Yeah, and it's also, it's very timely just because Sarah and I have been meeting, with the highest levels that are involved in this and, at other assessing firms around. And I should note that these also weren't people that were like, hey, I want to get Ellsworth's business. They were just like, I'm an assessor. I run an assessing firm. I'd love to just, give you some thoughts, and we've taken a fair amount of those meetings. And I should note on the kind of the first point on, I haven't seen yet, on anybody's been targeted or anything. If I did see anything like that, I would, I'd raise a red flag on that.
I didn't say they had been, but I will say that people have felt that way that have come before this committee.
Yep, and I think there's kind of a process for any individual taxpayer. Sometimes we've had folks come in. We have had conversations with others to talk in more detail. I'm actually going to be going out in the field to kind of talk to a few of these individuals that are kind of in that category to really, try to experience it from their perspective. Here's their property. Sure. Here's the valuation was. What about the ones that are similar by? How about this whole area? Did all those get adjusted? What is the process for our assessing? Just to get kind of an on-the-ground perspective here. So I haven't seen, to your point, Steve, the ones that have come through, there's always is an abatement process. So if people feel that they were unfairly targeted or that there's a mistake, this happens all over assessing. And that's one of the common themes of the assessors I talk to is like, this is a part of their lives, is they do assessments. They're not here to tax people. They're here to value so that there's equity in how the tax bills are spread. And I think Sarah can note on this too, like you can just see the frustration. Some of these are like family businesses where their kids work in assessing, and it's just like this time, and they get a lot of heat, assessors across. It's a tough job. I think assessing, code enforcement, the police, that's not exactly always the easiest citizen interaction. You're kind of giving news that people may not like. So those are very tough jobs. We have an abatement process, and any citizen, if they feel like they weren't treated fairly or that there's been a mistake along the way, feel free to escalate to me so I can discuss personally.
Just real quick.
Yep.
Into Steve's questions and this issue. We have a December workshop, correct?
Yep.
If there's room in it, I think this would be good to talk, maybe just to kind of come. We're going to have 3 new counselors. There's still a lot to learn. If there's time in that, I think it'd be good to have some discussion. If we're not going to, for the December meeting itself, if it's not I don't know if it's something we need to do if we're not going to vote on anything. I mean, I guess, and I'm fine, or doing both. And again, I don't know. This is just my thoughts. I just want to make sure that whatever space we're giving this issue, we're making sure we have enough space.
Sure.
Because it's a very important issue. And, so I just want to make sure we have enough space for that when we, in December.
Yeah, and I'd say there may be something I think to vote on for the December one because we have to move quickly. We have that's one of the reasons that we tried some internal process improvements last cycle and it didn't work. And so this cycle, we don't have until the next budget cycle to go around. So I am working. There's also a code element, and we've talked on how they can kind of help in this process. So a full team effort here. To your point, Steve, too. So I think the workshop, and maybe it could be its own piece. Maybe we do a Zoom call, that public can log on to too, so we can just make it a little more structurally easy for counselors to jump on. And this is kind of an hour-long conversation. Because to your point, Steve, there is that is the reval piece. I think it was 2009 was the last in Ellsworth. It might be 2006. But talking to a lot of the assessors as well, one had kind of, their recommendation was when you do that revaluation, then you get onto like a 3-year cycle and you do high levels of communication that we're going to lock you in here. 3 years is going to be kind of a statistical adjustment. to keep equity in the system. And there is a lot of flexibility here, talking to the deputy director. You know, some people, assessors, they want to keep up with those thresholds with the state, keep the reimbursements, and they just do kind of an across the board for different categories to bump them up. But there was a recommendation that's from them that doesn't really increase equity, that it's a little bit, you can do more of a, I think they called it a statistical adjustment, that is a little bit more equitable in how that goes about. And then there was also the full revaluation can be oftentimes if you don't have like the right carts, like you've just got so many new properties, or you've had like, there's just been a legacy of not keeping up with permits that you don't even know like kind of what's in the system, and that like is one of the bigger triggers for the revaluation. So there's like almost like an analysis of our system that needs to take place to be like, how equitable is it? You know, I think our data, I mean, the code department and our teams have been keeping up with all that. So is our cards still kept up with and accurate? Is it really more of like an analysis and a statistical adjustment, and getting on a better communications platform on how this goes? I think Steve is important too, so.
What if you outsourced the new properties? It's a question that you have a starting point from an independent valuation, and that cleans up the process of delivering the information to the council, because that's not hanging out there.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, that's all.
Yeah, and like a hybrid piece too, there could be insourcing some of that. There's personal property, Betty, other pieces. So definitely something to, you know, I think I'm leaning now more towards this isn't gonna be a cost savings. We might be able to make it cost neutral by bringing more external resources here. Just to do some of that work and analysis to number one, to get our tax bills out on time. And the other kind of process change I'm thinking is like keeping the mill rate calculators just off of the budget cycles entirely. That really, like, the city spending increases the dollar and the percent. And how the valuations are gonna change, that's, you know, really for the assessing agent, who's an agent of the state, to figure out and let us know, and we shouldn't be kind of directing, oh, well, you know, there's a ton of valuations, so let's increase spending, because that's gonna, you know, spending is spending. How it's equitably distributed is a totally separate process, so kind of an edit for the budget too.
Could I'd like to ask Nate a question, if I may, and I know I'm hogging time here, but a few meetings ago, I mentioned that I didn't care for the fact that we're having a finance meeting and then getting the warrant Thursday night, and that's hard to, you know, I find myself, I want to sign it, so Monday the checks can go out, but there's always a question or two that I wish I could ask, but I don't want to burden the process by showing up Monday morning and asking it. And we have an organizational council meeting coming up, and this is a question for Nate and Ashley, and maybe that, you know, it's your question and then the committee members. There's two parts of this, but my question would be this. What would it do to the finance committee? The finance department, if you had the warrant done Thursday night like you're doing now? That's what's happening now. It's coming out after this meeting. And we move the meeting to Monday mornings, so that the committee members have time to review that and hit the ground running Monday morning, so we could come in and look at items and sign. I think that would solve everything. It's just, do people want to start a Monday morning with finance?
I'll let Nate and Ashley, I have some thoughts, but I'll let Nate and Ashley weigh in.
I'm fine with that.
I'll say, the thing is I'm open to a lot of suggestions, and in fact, I was kind of waiting for the new, finance committee to meet, and we can kind of discuss this. I'm open to anything. If we want to adjust the meeting to Monday morning, that's fine. We could also even, adjust the warrant timing to have the warrant prepared ahead of time. We'd have to kind of adjust our current schedule, but we could do kind of one or the other. But we're not set in stone what we're doing right now. We're kind of waiting for the new finance committee and kind of establish like what what they would like to see. So I think that's kind of where we're sitting right now.
But it is an option, if we were to keep this time, that you could have a
Oh,
warrant
absolutely, yeah.
prepared a day before to address Steve's questions. Okay.
It's just easy to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
the docs here and you wanna, because prior to the closing of Friday, you know, you could review it Thursday night and we come in Friday and there's a stack and you can paw through and see what there is.
Yeah, regardless of what day, or I think I agree with you, Steve, to have the warrant prepared before this meeting, so if there are questions, I think it's probably more efficient for everyone.
Yeah, I'd love Monday to do it then. You know, I might want to look towards, you know, because we also have Mondays for workshops and we have Mondays for these other pieces. So, and every single one of these is, you know, takes time and preparation. So I like those edits. I think definitely something to consider for the organizational meeting. You know, I'd also, in terms of form and structure too, getting the highest productivity, I'd like to like really focus on the big three this next cycle. That assessing piece, getting it out on time, the contract proposals that we're considering to kind of create this best in class. I think it's such a critical piece of government, and this meeting is the perfect. Maybe we just really encourage council members either watch this if they want, you know, or join us for these meetings. The getting up to date on the audit process that Work Suicard's helping us lead, and there was one other piece. Those three: the audit, the reconciliation, and this piece is, to me, those things. If this finance committee can be very involved in, there's going to be a lot more policy changes and edits, potentially some things that need to come to city council next cycle to make it a modern, efficient system. That'll probably be the biggest gift. It's not the most sexy thing in the world, but it is the most important for the city to have modern operating systems. So really having high-frequency updates on all three of those categories. And to your point, Patrick, I'm like, when will this happen? Let's put some dates on it. And let's hold ourselves publicly accountable to those dates and let the council and the community kind of know when those three big pieces that they're going to be well run.
Great.
That's it for me.
Okay.
Public?
I just have one very brief thing, and
Ray, I'm going to be the.
Raymond Williams, 56 Hancock Street, Ellsworth, Maine. When are you going to be doing the paving on Hancock Street that has been in the program since the ban of 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, whenever it was said is there? And also Elm Street. Now, I've been watching what's going on. I look out my kitchen window and I see at the foot of Elm Street, you're digging up, putting new pipes in, and then you do that for a day or two, and then you come back a week later and you're digging up in roughly the same area, although I think it's a little bit different. And you've taken care of a problem there, and maybe you're just waiting to see whether you resolve the ice problem that has been a problem in front of 1 Elm Street, which actually has its frontage on Hancock Street, and also the brewery. And maybe you're waiting to see whether that worked out, but you're not gonna really know whether that's worked out until you get into the winter season, and whether you have ice buildup that you have to remove, as you've been doing for 10 or 12 years. So I just wanna know, I think Hancock Street, I don't think it's ready to be paved, because the only work you've done is in that area, and I think there's other work on it that has to be done before it can be paved, taking care of manhole covers and all that, and you haven't done. And I also know from past times, you've got a problem in that I think asphalt plants are going to be closing pretty soon. So I have my doubts if you're going to get those paving done, although since you've got Elm Street ground down, and Elm Street should be ready to have the thing put on, I at least would hope you're going to get Elm Street done before winter comes. And those are my two things. These other issues you've addressed, which are going to be coming up, and I know where you are on cannabis because I listened to Planning Board, and I think John DeLeo asked the question and got an answer then that is still off, wherever it is, out in the ether of attorneys and manager's office and whoever else is studying it. And I want you on that to take your time and get it right, because the drafts of the previous ordinances have been floating around. As I've said several times, there were internal inconsistencies in them that made no sense whatsoever, and you have the council, the new council, has a decision to make as to who is going to be the licensing authority on that, whether it's the council, the city clerk, the city manager, or someone else. Thank you.
Make sure.
I might send it over to Sarah on, I think you probably know Hancock and Elm have a good update. I have what I think, but I think you might be better on this one, Sarah.
Hi, so they did do some pipe repairs. The reason that there was kind of two digs happening is because one of the pipes that they found was asbestos pipe, so they had to kind of pivot and change their plan. Mike Harris actually just texted me and said that Hancock and Elm is on schedule for tomorrow.
There we go. And that does kind of complete the decks on.
I bet Ray will let us know if it's not done tomorrow.
I'm sorry, stay in.
No, fairly so.
Elm, I think Elm is ready to be done, and I think they've got to do that. I don't think, as I said earlier, Hancock is ready to be paid.
Well, I would also note kind of, this was probably when I started doing my community feedback sessions before I even took the job, that the most complaints I got was this roads around here are terrible, the roads around, you gotta do something about the roads. We went lightning quick with our teams and our roads committee to do 2 million in city roads, partnered with the state on their 18 million. It was a lot in 1 year. I think we've got some process edits there that if we do that much roads again, but looking forward to finishing those up. But also that this work continues. We have StreetScan, which is a company, a tech company that's, they've already done our sidewalks, but they basically take like these LiDAR cars, and they've already been out there with the LiDAR cars to analyze every stitch of road that we have. And, it looks underneath the roads into the surface, and it gives us basically a needs assessment, a condition assessment for every single road in Ellsworth. So we have the roads that we did this year, and we also kind of monitoring some of the state roads, but going forward, I think a lot of our road planning and how we pave, repair, and keep up with roads and sidewalks, the 10 miles in sidewalks that we have too. You can literally go into the file and take a video down each one, and red, yellow, greens, missing pieces of sidewalk. We'll take the council through some of those, but we can start getting to some of our deferred maintenance there, and make sure our roads are well taken care of.
Anyone else from the public? Questions? Please approach the podium and state your name for the record.
Morning, Jared, resident. So I'm super excited that I believe it was January, February, we're gonna start talking about land use and the impact and having workshops about that and whatnot. I was just curious, I've heard it quite a bit, this white glove service. And I didn't know if you had a moment, you kind of elaborate into what your vision of the white glove service would be for incoming businesses to Ellsworth and whatnot.
Yeah, to me, we got a lot of customers here in a variety of things. We have customers in our front office area, and we did some work on that and kind of analyzing work hours and meeting needs there. But I think one of our most important customers, if not the most important, is new business and current business owners looking to expand, to be able to come into City Hall. And I know, that's certified business friendly, Steve. I think that was like a previous governor's kind of certification program. It gets on there. But you might have certified business friendly. It isn't exactly that. And I know I've talked to a lot of developers, a lot of people coming through our processes that haven't been happy, I should say. I think there's a few elements to that. Some of it is they don't like our ordinances. They think that some of them are cumbersome and are too restrictive in some areas. And I think I've seen it here as city manager. Oftentimes we add ordinance to make things more restrictive. We haven't pulled them back. I think parking slot requirements, heights of buildings, other pieces that are, I think, in the more low-hanging fruit that developers want in that category. So that there's and that they're in line with state law. And then there's the process of getting something through. And I think I have heard from a lot of folks, and I've been in meetings where, coming through some of our processes, they don't feel like they're being treated kindly. They don't feel like they're being given best-in-class kind of benefit of the doubt coming through our systems, and that needs to change as well. I've had a lot of those conversations. So how can we provide that kind of best-in-class service? Like we said with assessing too, sometimes we have to say no to things, and see there's a natural kind of trigger that it's not the easiest thing in the world to come to government and, hey, this is the rule or the regulation, and some people are not going to be happy about that. I think it's difficult to get there. But I do think there's kind of a white glove service for treating those folks as they come in here that can be approved upon, and how can the city help make that pretty clear on what the kind of standards and obligations are. So there's kind of that process element to it as well. And then I know the tax element too, right? I think that's the other big piece. That's more of a macro side of things, that people see the city running well, that the streets are cleaned, that the parks are picked up after, that they are going to be entering into a city where they get a good process, but good city government, ruthlessly competent administrative services. So I think those pieces are there. That's what I think of as white glove service. But I'm curious to you. I know you know this more.
I agree with a lot of the things that you've brought up. I guess where I was going with this is if we're going to be diving into impact fees and land use and whatnot for workshops in January, February, whenever that was, if we should coincide some of these other portions with that and try to just get this whole business-friendly thing done in one swipe instead of taking bits and pieces of it and keep working it through, and it's a 3-year process. If we really want to become business-friendly and work on this and provide a service and tell outside businesses that we want you to come to Ellsworth, let's just do it all at once and get it done and get people wanting to do business in Ellsworth and be a win-win for the community and everybody else, which is kind of my thought.
I agree. And I think there is, maybe we can, I think we have an ordinance update on the workshop. There is a tier to it. There's the stuff to be in line with state and the low-hanging fruit and the ordinance changes, and there is that process piece of it too. I made sure that was in the request for proposals, that it wasn't just going to be the ordinance piece. It was going to be, how do you come through our system? And how do you have checks and balances that people can say, is it a card if you do not like your service? To talk to this person, and I'd love to get your thoughts maybe more on that, Jared. And is that a roundtable with developers? Is it, is that the kind of thing you're looking for on that side of the business? But
Awesome. Well, no, I think, just having conversations and getting the ball rolling and trying to find the right direction would be the right approach, and get feedback from everybody on what works, what doesn't work, and come with a plan and try to get it done.
Hope you'll be part of those conversations, Jared.
As long as it's not on a Friday night, I'll
All
be
right,
here.
I'll make sure it's not.
All right, you guys have a great weekend.
Thanks, Jared, you too.
thanks.
Any other public comments?
Roger Gilly, resident. I guess, what you guys were just talking about, I think we have to dig a little deeper. As being a business owner of 2 different businesses in the city of Ellsworth, I think that we need to kind of backtrack on that before we worry about, new businesses coming in. We can't ask a business that's already in business, been a business, to do things differently than businesses that we've just put in town, within the last year, and try to make a business that's been here, give them new regulations that the other people aren't receiving as they come into Ellsworth. I guess what I wanted to ask is, I asked, a little over a year ago, mentioned it the other day, I'd kind of like to know why you know, our school buses aren't back in our own garage. You know, we're spending $100,000 roughly, you know, just round number, to rent a piece of property for the buses to sit outside. I know when my father was the mechanic and the bus driver, he got a plaque from the state police, you know, 5, 6 years. When they come in and do their inspection, they didn't have to do anything, you know, so the buses were perfect. They put stickers on them, they walked away. He got a plaque for it. You know, now we get telephone calls, the bus is gonna be late, won't start, broke down, big repair bills. The city likes to waste money. I understand that we built an office building, an office inside the garage on one of the bays that were in the school bus side, and put in a kitchen. None of the guys on the highway side have ever, over the years, you know, made the garage their home during plowing season. They all live fairly close, so when they're done plowing, they go home. You know, I don't know as if we really need a full kitchen and a bathroom, you know, set up like they have now, when they already had bathrooms, but they took them out and then redid whatever they did. But I'm thinking that, you know, all the buses that we have will fit in the building for the most part, except for the spare buses. Why aren't they back there? And then the other question is, I was talking to some people, and, you know, about the whole track thing, you know, and the school board mentioned that they're gonna have to rip up the lawn. While the track's round, we can get from one side of the track to the other without going across the lawn, is just one thought. And the other thought is, you know, as long as that track's been there, I was told that they're gonna rip up all the hot top that's underneath the rubber mat. I can't believe that we've worn out all the hot top underneath that track. So to save a little money and, you know, do different things, you know, and if that's the case, why aren't we putting the track at the school if we're gonna completely rebuild it? You know, and maybe take the tires and that stuff off the track and just leave it hot top and let the community use that, and we put one at the school that the school can use more for their sports, and everything's right there handy to, like, the high school. But I was just wondering if I could finally maybe get an answer about why are we not moving the buses over?
Yeah, directly to the school department, they have their own budget cycles, they go through this. I mean, my general understanding here is they have a lease that I believe is up this year, could be wrong on that. Again, it's the school's purview for their budget. I think they have a lease on their building, I think they have some covered areas. I'm not quite sure we have any facilities, actually, I know we don't have any facilities to host indoor bus storage. In the city of Ellsworth, our highway department, there isn't any room in that facility for that type of thing. So I directed to the schools on all your school-related questions there. But yeah, that's.
Well, so before we went to the RSU, all the school buses were in the garage. On the other side of the garage, the highway department was on there. We have really not many more buses than we had before. We don't have any more employees than we had in the 80s at the garage. We really don't have a whole lot more equipment that we store in the garage. You know, I feel everything's spread out and taking up space. I mean, before it was kind of packed in there, but it worked. You know, as a taxpayer, I feel that, you know, we're spending a lot more in repairs on these buses than we need to be. Our bus is in way better shape previously. You know, we had a bus driver / mechanic for years. You know, the highway department managed to be able to take care of their own equipment. Previously, you know, with other head people that had run the city garage on the highway side, did a fairly good job making sure that their employees took care of the equipment, washed the equipment, and so on and so forth, and everything was taken care of. You know, I grew up out at that garage, so I know what the garage was and how it was set up. So to put a fact out there that the buses won't fit in there, I think is a little much. It's a matter of, you know, you might hurt somebody's feelings because they have to put a rake on the wall and not lean it against the, you know, a different wall. You know, they might have to hang it up or, you know, store something somewhere in an outside shed or vice versa, you know. I think they will fit. That's my thought.
Thank you.
Counselors, any thoughts on that?
I'd like to weigh in a little bit on that. And again, this is more school department than municipal side. But there's a lot of municipalities that store their school buses at the schools themselves and use their garage for repairs only. So I'm not sure, and I'm just weighing in on this a little bit, that there's a lot of buses in a canopy right now that are basically outside. And I wonder if we shouldn't look at the mechanic service being done at the city garage and the storage being done at these big parking lots that we have with the schools. And when the superintendent was interested in buying Emery, is it Emery Lane, the new superintendent's office?
Avery Lane.
Avery Lane, I'm sorry.
Emery.
So there was a talk in that conversation when there was some consideration of buying that building and stop renting at Camden National Bank. They had mentioned perhaps when the lease come up, parking the buses at the superintendent's office. And that was one of the things that they brought up in that conversation before it was voted to buy. And I would certainly think that parking at the school, if they're not going to renew the lease, and maybe using a bay or two for repairs at the city garage, maybe that's a balance there. I don't know. I'm just thinking that that may warrant a view.
Yeah, I can say definitively,
Yeah.
the city garage is not I mean, that's a pretty full place without school buses. To your point on the mechanic piece and maybe bringing it in, we do that for our fire trucks, look for other things. I can see if there might be some cost efficiencies there. I think it's also important to note that this city council does not have budget line item authority over the school budget. We do oftentimes, get a lot of folks here that come here for school pieces, but that's really the schools. You can attend their meetings. The council votes overall on the school budget. I think they can make recommendations on where they'd like to see it land at, or vote it down, and then it can't move forward entirely. But unlike the municipal side of the budget, which is also the smaller side and the one that was net negative 0.4% last cycle, they don't have line item authority over the school budget piece. So,
But the school did bring up, when there was discussions about buying the new building, the superintendent's office, right here and at the council meeting, that they would consider, when the lease comes up, parking the buses at the new superintendent's office. And if that's, I don't think that's reality. I think if you're going to do anything, it needs to go in a school parking lot. But that's just.
yeah, and I'll bring it up with Superintendent Bowles, who I know is, we have had some budget discussions already with them. She was here, I think, was it last Finance Committee meeting? Yep. To talk about kind of where they're at. As I said, I think their lease is up on that facility over there, so this is I would assume it's already on her plan to talk about this in more detail, but good to have that heads-up piece. We can revisit some of the repair sides of things. I know next cycle, we're also going to think about the snow plowing is another kind of school efficiency that we think we might be able to, in the future, maybe, have the city side of things. We have this Parks and Rec unit that's doing additional things. Can we not outsource and insource some of that to save some funds? Maybe that's a good idea, maybe it's not. I think it could be part of that. There's also, I have had kind of a off-the-wall idea that, I think, what is it, just across the line here, near the ATV area, there's that kind of former mill building. I think they have a massive, indoor space out there, where the new Hancock kind of emergency center is going to be operating out of, and I have had some, discussions with folks out there. There is a large indoor space. Now, it's not in Ellsworth, but it's pretty, close. It's probably as close to where those buses are now. It's a fairly large indoor space. Is that an option? Again, that's totally, but maybe it's something I can bring up with the schools as well, as we're thinking about it, to get creative in that.
Prior to you being here, and you'd have to have somebody more experienced than I, but I think at one time the school leased space in Hancock for the buses.
Really?
Well, you'd have to check that out. I think at one point, they were leased in Hancock and stored at Alden Bunker's facility, but don't hold me to that. I just think I remember them being in Hancock. And I'm not against where they are either. I'm just saying that if we're gonna have the discussion, let's have the discussion.
Yep. Thanks all.
All right, well, thank you all. Have a great day.
I apologize. This is the second item that I thought there would be some discussion on, but Section 409 of the Charter provides, as soon as possible following an election, the council will meet, examine the election record, and declare the results. Now, I'm wondering, when's that meeting going to occur? Historically, that has occurred on the Thursday or Friday after an election. Now, Friday is probably out of the question because the city doesn't operate in City Hall on Friday. I at least am glad to hear that the Public Works Department's going to be operating tomorrow, but the city doesn't work. So I don't know, I'm wondering when that is. And then the second thing is, the organizational meeting will be held annually at 10 a.m. on the first business day of the next week following the election, or as soon as possible thereafter. Now, I'm wondering when that's going to be held. I know that for the last 2 years, I think, it's utilized the as soon as possible thereafter, and the organizational meeting has actually been held on Monday night, which I don't have any problem with that, but we've got to get city government going, and I realize there may be some other issues which I have been looking all day yesterday and even this morning at 7:30 before I came here on the city website to see whether there was any talk about these two meetings, scheduling of them, or also any information about if there is anything happening regarding a recount. And I did see in today's Bangor News, Bill Trotter's article, he has something, a paragraph in it, which sort of talked about one of the candidates, Mr. Linehan, sending an email requesting a recount. And then the paragraph after that sort of implied that there was a recount held and didn't change anything. And so I don't know what that had to do with at all. Maybe Trotter got something mixed up, but I just want to know, when are these meetings going to be held?
Yeah, I'll, I think one of the pieces of this meeting, sometimes it flows outside of finance. And
Yeah, we've
it's,
been pretty far outside finance.
yeah, we get really outside of finance. However, this is obviously, Ray, it's something of a matter of citizen concern, and oftentimes,
Everything boils down to money, folks.
so I'd look back to the city website in the next couple hours. There'll be an update on that, both as to the organizational meeting timing, the certification of election results. And
Could you announce that now so these people would know?
I haven't gone in to find the official recount piece that there is, that recount request. I mean, I believe one of our citizens is going to be there soon, so.
What about the organizational meeting and all of that? Could we just?
Yeah, we'll have an announcement that'll go to city council and be posted on the website at the same time, but I'm not going to do it at the finance committee meeting. It'll be soon.
Great,
Yep,
thank you.
thanks.
All right, everyone have a great day.